What immoral or illegal things does the company you currently work for do? I'm currently working at a for-profit college until I can find something better. The list of immoral things they do is very long. Here are a few that really bother me. They have special admissions staff who specifically target recent veterans because the GI Bill is a cash cow. They have specific training on recruiting old and possibly senile people to convince them online classes are a great thing. Again, this is a cash cow as they will often blow their life savings on a worthless degree. This is easy money because they don't need to worry about them being denied loans. They don't get any of the various government funds for students until that specific student is active. They are constantly trying to wheel around the legal definition of an active student by doing things like having them sit in a class the day they fill out their financial paperwork and counting that as attendance and then taking the gov't money. They will enroll mentally challenged or other disadvantaged people if they can get gov't loans. If those students don't log in to do their online courses, they aren't active, so the admissions staff that enrolled them will often spend a portion of their day logging in and doing just enough coursework for those people to keep them enrolled and the money coming in. I used to work on the factory floor of a car parts manufacturer. The brake components had to pass very stringent government mandated tests. In order to demonstrate compliance, 6 or so random units were periodically removed from the line for testing during each shift. The only thing is, they weren't randomly selected at all. Instead, we were ordered to test a large number of parts until we found ones that complied. These then became our random samples. Yeah, think about that next time you get in your car. Edit, before everybody condemns me. I get it, I drive too. I have a family. I was really young and naive at the time and didn't understand what was going on. I didn't have any idea what a brake caliper was, and I'm not sure I could tell you even now. At the time, I was working for a temping agency in my time off from university. I was sent to all sorts of warehouses and factories all over the city. Everything from warehouses full of smelly, fancy cheese to high-tech facilities like this one. Whilst I was on the end of the line, I was instructed to take parts off the line and put them into a machine, essentially a robotic arm in a glass box, from what I remember, and told now, test the parts every hour by pressing this button. Once you get 6 that pass, put them in this box for us. That was it, that's all I knew. At the time I was too dumb to realize what was going on. The whole plant was working slow down because of a union dispute, and they had brought in agency staff to try to keep things moving. Once it finally dawned on me what was happening, yes, I'm a dumbass, the whole plant had gone under due to the industrial trouble. For those who are asking what make of car, many. The facility was located in Australia and made components for a bunch of different car companies. All of this occurred years ago, so if you drive a recently produced car you needn't worry. I used to be an engineer with Ecom. One of our offices in California hired Gaddafi's son on an internship. I imagine to get all of the work in Libya. So when shit hit the fan a couple of years ago, he took a vacation to go kill rebels and civilians. So long story short, we had to let him go. I worked at a reptile farm for 2 years. The less desirable, unsellable animals are basically left to die. We had 2 rooms we called overflow rooms, where they'd get thrown into cages in mass groups and fed/watered maybe a couple times a month. It would have been so much more humane if they would have just euthanized them rather than let them starve to death slowly. Just pay overtime to the hourly workers and demand 45+ hour weeks. Of course they even have to skirt the payroll system by doing some stupid math, dividing the actual overtime hours by 66 or something, so that our pay stub still says we got paid an overtime rate. Just the actual time we worked was underreported. But it's okay, the owner of the company is worth about 50 million, I would bet. He owns multiple companies and properties like strip plazas that he rents, and he needs to keep adding garages to his custom home to store all his vintage cars he buys. Fucking cocksucker. At my old job, if I designed a network that ran exceptionally well and required very little work to keep running, which is the idea, my boss would have one of the lower level techs remote in and stop services or disable of LAN, then assign me to fix it. I found out after the same glitch hit a few of my networks, confronted the tech, and then my boss. He said good networks don't pay bills, so I left and started my own company with a partner. I took like 3/4 of his business with me, and I busted him trying to use some old login credentials to create issues with some of the clients I had stolen. We informed the business owner and he flipped his shit. That was a good day. I work in a factory with couple hazardous places. The company is all about safety. It's a modern trend, so it wants us to sign these papers that basically disallows us to work in hazardous places. However, if there occurs something that can only be dealt with by going to a specific hazardous place, we are told to go there, even though we just signed a paper that doesn't allow us to work there. The signed piece of paper is just there to with the company's hands in case something happens to the employee. It's extremely fishy, and it has raised some major issues between the company and its employees. I used to work for RBS, Royal Bank of Scotland, about 10 years ago. Week 3 of training, I realized they were deliberately targeting people who had absolutely no chance of paying off loans and giving them credit cards and approving loan requests for stupid amounts. Deliberately entice people into debt and then doing everything to drive that debt up higher and not letting them pay it off. When I asked the trainer why, she explained that to the bank, getting people into debt is basically like a license to print money, although they had that too. Because if people owed them, then they could borrow money or print it and secure it against that debt on the basis that they'd pay it off. At the time I wondered what would happen when everyone realized that almost none of these people who owed a ton of money would ever pay it up and would eventually default on it. Well, we know now, don't we? That's why the economy went arse up. Because they were all doing and trading in derivatives of fictional money. Mental health group home I recently quit from. The home houses up to 8 boys 14 to 20 with mental health/behavioral problems, sometimes even sex offenders. Usually there are 2 staff on at a time, but by law only 1 is required. There was a very large 16-year-old boy residing there last month who had very recently told a therapist he was having aggressive sexual thoughts/urges, rape fantasies. In a case like this it is expected that all staff are notified and females are not scheduled alone. A staff called out sick, so the supervisor had to schedule someone quickly. He forced a young petite girl to work alone and did not tell her about the boy's urges. A few hours into the shift this boy overpowered the staff and forced her into his bedroom. He attempted to rape her but was stopped when another boy attacked him with a fire extinguisher. The girl is traumatized, as is the boy who intervened. This supervisor knowingly put this girl in this situation. Can she sue? I'm a nanny. My bosses give me half my wages under the table so that I look poor enough on paper to afford health insurance. I pay my husband's international student tuition in cash, and I'm the only one who can work really right now. None of that is taken into account, yet I can still be penalized if I don't buy health insurance. So this is the solution. And yes, I realize the solution could be for them to provide it for me, but I finally get vacation. I have to just be happy with it all at some point. Not my current company, but the one I worked at before. We sold these awful warranty things on the products we sold. The goal was 8% of the transactions had won, since they were 95% profit for us. But they were horrible and no one could ever get the company to honor them. We had a conference call with all the GMS plus our regionals with ideas on how to sell more. It included lying and fraud. We also had a plan to cut payroll, which involved hiring all new staff and at minimum wage, and everyone that was making more was to get no more than 4 hours a week until they quit. Some retail companies are awful. Not sure if I'm too late to be seen. I work in healthcare, and we scan your credit card into a computer that is, in all likelihood, riddled with viruses. We then transmit your credit card in plain text over multiple networks. At least we are not saving it though. After we eventually pass it to our processor, we are nowhere close to our licensing agreements. We were audited once by our AV company and just photoshopped the report to indicate we were within our agreement. Tons of Visual Studio and MS SQL installations we don't have licenses for. The same employees who check your medical record also check their AOL mail and download and run attachments that have been everything from very noticeable crypto lockers to probably backdoors we never detected to this day. We can't block Flash/Java/AOL mail because we can't be bothered to have to deal with the problems that will cause. Let's see who can guess where I work. Overwork, sometimes 80 hours a week, but we are salaried. Hazardous environments with no extra pay or any type of reimbursement. We'll take your whole paycheck if they messed up the previous one. Accuse us all of being rapists. We kill people. Guess the last two kinda gave it away. I work or worked at a university research department that among other things looks at biofouling and ocean degradation. I work directly for a hugely internationally renowned researcher, 300 plus pubs, nature pubs etc etc. I'm aware that this person, my supervisor, took large payments from local mining companies to publish false information about the safety of a dredging project on the Great Barrier Reef. The publications were made, the mining company used them to prove to our government that the dredging project would do little to no harm, when in fact the reported numbers of biofouling agents were 1,000s of times higher than reported. Now the Great Barrier Reef is getting ruined beyond repair and my supervisor is waiting for the backlash to catch up to them, but it's okay, they are at the end of their career, and from the other side of the world, when the shit hits the fan, they will just resign and go back home, where no legal ramifications will arise. I tried going to several people with this, but each time was told that this person is a senior researcher that brings in a lot of money to the university and it wasn't my place to question them. I've since left my graduate program. I feel like I'm the only person with any kind of integrity in that entire place. The Domino's I worked at up until last week regularly sells expired food. We were forced to serve expired chicken on a weekly basis. We were also forced to go around and change the dates on all the sauce bottles that expired that day every single day. It was horrifically disgusting. The company is cheap and don't care about our employees. Everyone makes minimum wage and the managers only make 10 an hour. I can look up my sales records, and I alone have made this company $300,000 in the last 2 months. They recently held a bike to work contest that I and a coworker won. They gave us cooker from the 80 backquotes that they had laying in storage. Like shit you wouldn't take for free at a garage sale. It was like a slap in the face. Mind you, this is a company that employs less than 50 people and gross easily $5 million in profit a season, but can't afford a real prize for a contest they put on for employee appreciation. I work at a certain amusement park in Par and it's pretty well known that the owner hides the employees. They refuse to pay minimum wage to underage employees and instead pay a fine at the end of the year in order to save money. Will deny that cooking equipment is broken in order to avoid paying for repairs, or just flat out denying to repair it, which makes our jobs harder. Paying underage workers under the table and having them underreport their hours. And the boss of the area where I work is currently being investigated by the IRS for some kind of tax fraud. I used to work for a car rental agency where they would black out reservations during high seasons like summer and Christmas. Then all the other car rental places would sell out, leaving the unprepared traveler with no other option than to come to us and pay whatever ridiculous figure we could make up. Anything over list price, we got 20%. So we were all challenged to get the highest above list possible and therefore make the highest commission. They would also have us target large families with lots of luggage and basically convince them that it wouldn't fit in what they had reserved and upgrade them to a large SUV. Also, they would charge people for damage to the cars and re-rent them over and over without fixing the damage ever. They also owned the body shop, so even when they did fix them, it was their own employees doing it for a fraction of the cost they would charge the customer. All very scummy and immoral stuff going on there. I used to work in a grocery store that was unionized. Despite being unionized, it didn't really look after the employees very well. You have to work there for 5 to 7 years to get full-time pay. Full-time pay is like $13 to $14. Speaking of full-time, you won't become a full-time employee like ever. The only way to become a full-time employee is if another full-time employee quits, but within the last 2 years the company has made an initiative to have less full-time employees. Last year the company got rid of spousal insurance. If you want your spouse to have some insurance, you have to pay extra for it. Wegmans. Nothing. I worked there for 4 years a long time ago, and in retrospect, there was literally nothing wrong with what they did. I was with the cart pushers. One day, the wind chill went down to -20 and the high temperature was around 10 degrees Fahrenheit. We were only allowed outside for 35 minutes at a time with 25-minute breaks inside. Management set out free coffee and hot chocolate for us. And we got paid for those 20-minute breaks. Or on the flip side, during the warmer spring and hot summer months, we had access to coolers full of Wegmans brand Gatorade and water, also free. Under 18. You bet they ensure that all child labor laws are followed. Refrigerated food left out of the fridge for an indeterminate amount of time. Mark it and throw it out. They rocked. Instead of paying benefits and offering insurance to full-time employees, my company simply hires more part-timers. Unions are non-existent and frowned upon. Our employees aren't paid a living wage and are incentivized to snitch on one another in order to earn an extra $100. There are plenty of others. Retail is a nightmare.